Hi guys, it's Becky, and guess what we're doing today? Yep, you guessed it. We are painting and we're making jewelry, and we're going to do it all using the same color palette. I have been loving the blues and turquoises and whites and silvers that came in the Bargain Bead Box. This, I think, is the Sparkling Snowfall is the name of it. There's also, some of you may have noticed, I opened up the, where did it go? Just had it. Why am I not good at keeping track of my things? But that was the Sam's Bead Box, which had some very similar colors in it. It's really great. And I know some folks have mentioned that they wish that there was some variety, but I love the fact that both of them, without, any planning, it's just serendipity that it ended up this way, gave us like wintry palettes that weren't necessarily holiday flavored, like red and green and gold. Those are fantastic colors for Christmas and that sort of thing, but not everybody celebrates Christmas. So it's great that folks who maybe don't celebrate have some things that they can use that are seasonal and that will go with it. And yeah, this is exactly the same color palette here. This is the Sam's Bead Box, and it's gorgeous and it's delicious. I haven't had enough time yet to think about ideas, although I was having ideas when I was unboxing it. I haven't had enough time to think about ideas with this one yet, so that's why we're going with the Bargain Bead Box, because I've had it sitting there percolating in my brain for a little bit longer, so I already have ideas for how I'm going to be using it. So one of the things we're going to be doing with that is I am going to be doing a wire wrapped bail with the stone that came with it, the stone pendant. It is gorgeous. I think my mom commented on my unboxing that it looks like a crack in a glacier, and yeah, it really does. It's beautiful. So we're going to be wire wrapping that. We're also going to be wire wrapping some drops, and then we're going to be using some of the apatite gemstones and probably some of these guys for stringing a necklace and getting that all out there. For paint, I am going to be painting some snowflakes. And to do that, I'm going to be using the cool side of my Paul Rubens palette. And I picked out some colors that would go with what we've got here, and that's French blue. It is an ultramarine blue, but it's very finely ground, so it isn't as granulating as other ultramarines. I've got that one right there. And then Indian Throne blue. This is the blue. This is the blue. The blue. I love this color so much. It gives you kind of that moody, dark navy blue that you get with Prussian blue, but it is not as toned down of a blue, and you also don't have the light vastness issues that you have with Prussian blue. And then we've got translucent turquoise, so we're going to be using that one. And I have, if you see, shiny, this antique silver gouache. This is Holbein gouache. It came in the Iridori springtime kit, or it's not a kit, it was just a box of colors, their color palette for springtime, and it was the Iridori box for that, for Holbein gouache. And so I'm going to be using this to add some silvery highlights to my my snowflakes when I have got those painted. And I also am going to be adding some cool effects, like you can see here, with some salt. So I've got this coarse salt. It gives me different sizes of salt. You can use table salt just fine. There's nothing wrong with it. The iodine in it isn't going to affect the way that it creates this effect. But yeah, coarse salt or sea salt is fine with that. So that's what I'm going to be using for my paint. I also, for my painting, am going to be using some drawing gum or masking fluid. Now this one comes in a marker form. It is going to be easier to use for me, also because I don't really need I don't want to or need to do fine lines with it, it's going to be just fine for masking out my snowflakes and then painting around it with my colors. And what it does is it dries down to kind of a rubbery finish, and it masks the paper from the paint. So where you have the drying gum, you don't end up with paint. And so we're going to be using that. You can also get it in little bottles and then use a paintbrush that you don't care about to paint with, or a silicone brush. It works great with this, and it's great, easy to clean afterwards. I've got myself a rubber eraser to remove this with after it dries. And for actual painting, I'm going to be using my Flightum 5 mop brush. I'm just going to be putting out a wash at first, and that's what this is going to be used for. And then when I go back in for my detailing with the gouache, I'm going to use this number 2 cat's tongue. It's an MLA from Craftimo, because you can get a real fine line with that or a thick line. It's kind of a versatile kind of brush to be able to have with that. And this actually came in the Craftimo subscription for MLA, which, like, the brushes are great, but like if I have like one art purchase that I regret the most from this year, it was signing up for that subscription box. And it's just, I mean, maybe I should have a separate video for this, but it was just disappointing. And maybe it's because I was spoiled by having my first introduction to watercolor be the Let's Make Art boxes, because like the quality of those boxes are so much higher, but the price is so much lower than the Craftimo one. Plus there was shipping issues, there was all of that. I mean, but just like, you know, a $50 box for a couple of paintbrushes, some Mungyo paint, and one tutorial, it wasn't worth it. Not when you can like pay a little bit less, and yeah, it's usually liquid watercolor, and you don't get brushes, but you do get 4 tutorials every month with the Let's Make Art boxes. And if you've already got paint and brushes and paper, they have a digital subscription where you get all the tutorials and the outlines to download, and it's much more affordable. Like it's a fantastic way of supporting that business and also getting art that you can do. Anyway, that was probably more than I needed to say about that. But yeah, I seriously regret signing up for that. But this brush is great, so I'm gonna go ahead and use that. You can buy the brushes separately, by the way. You don't need to sign up for the subscription box to get them. They do have them on the Craftimo site. So let me actually get this moved out of the way, because what we're going to do is, the way that we're going to do it is I'm going to grab my Baohong block right here. It is a 300 grams per square meter, cold pressed, 100% cotton block of watercolor paper. And I'm going to draw out my snowflakes with my drawing gum. And then while the drawing gum dries, because it needs to be dry before you paint on it, otherwise it doesn't work. It won't do what you want it to do. So I'm going to let that dry. While that's drying, we're going to do our wire wrapping with these and making some drops. After I've made those, we'll go back to it because the drying gum should be dry, and we can lay down our wash with our watercolor paint. Then and put our salt on for our special effects. While that's drying, I will make the jewelry, and then when we come back to our watercolor, it should be completely dry. We should be able to brush off our salts and start adding our silver accents. So that's the plan. Hopefully this will all work. So let me move this out of the way so that I am not getting any water or paint on my beading surface. Moved out of the way. Let's get our paper down. Actually, let's move this over here so that it is on this side. Oh, I forgot to mention my tools for the the wire wrapping. For wire wrapping, I'm going to be using flush cutters, chain nose pliers, and my 6-step bail making pliers. And then when we do our stringing, I'm going to be using the magical crimpers and some 2x2 crimp tubes to string that on my cord. So when we get to this, I'll reintroduce that. I forgot to do it with my first introduction with all of that. So let's get some water. It's already blue, and that's fine because it's all one color for our paint. Paint. Actually, no, I don't need the paint out here yet because we're just going to do the drawing gum. Since I don't need my water yet. All right. Now, I am going to grab a piece of scrap paper. And sometimes you've got to press down a little bit in order to get it to come out. Now it does have a really, really light blue color, so I should be able to see where I'm drawing it. And I don't know if y'all have seen a snowflake before, but they usually have like 6 lines from it. And then they'll have like some spiky bits. That come out. And I know some folks do snowflakes with like 8 sections, but 6 is more accurate for the actual way that snowflake crystals form. And I was obsessed with snowflakes when I was younger. I would sit and it was like my fidget, you know? I would cut out snowflakes like all year round. It wasn't even just at Christmas time that would happen for me. And this is not symmetrical or even. This is going to be they're going to be very thick, sort of rough lines around here. That is okay. Because I am not looking for fine details on my snowflakes. Just not. But yeah, I would sit there with like a ream of printer paper and scissors, and like while I was watching TV, I just cut out snowflakes. And then save them. I had a binder with all of my snowflakes in it. That's probably good. Good enough. Good enough for that one. So yeah, you'll see when I remove the drawing gum, there'll be kind of a rustic, rough look to my lines. And that's gonna be all well and good. You can, if you're doing this along with me, you can go back in after you remove the drawing gum and tighten up the lines, kind of smooth them out, make them a little bit straighter if you wanted to. There's nothing wrong with that. Just realize that when you do that, you're probably going to end up with some hard lines with your... oh, wow, you are just a real weird looking guy there. That's fine. I shouldn't have started my first one with the weirdest looking guy. I should have practiced more. But that's fine, because I'm just having fun with this. We're just making snowflakes. Anyway, do you guys have an obsession with snowflakes like I do? Probably not as deep. But I love them. I think they are fantastic. Here we go. And this is probably going to be enough snowflakes for us. I think that'll be enough. So it's really light blue. It's going to dry down. And then once it's all dried, I'm going to put my wash on. We're going to add a bunch of different blues all together. And then we'll put on some salt. But we're going to let this dry first. And while it's drying, let's do some wire wrapping. All right. I love having something else I can do while I'm waiting for one process to finish. It's really great for me. All right, so I'm going to be using 22 gauge wire to wire wrap my drops, my little water droplets. And did I pull out a 6th one for this one? I did not. I've got 2 over here that I'm keeping aside so that if it takes a little bit longer, oh, I already got my my extra guy out. If it takes a little bit longer for the wash to finish drying, I'll just make some earrings while I'm waiting. I think that'll be fine. But yeah, I've got 22 gauge silver wire for that. Let's pull all of these out. I am definitely I want to move this out of the way. So I want to get all the beads that I'm going to be using out. I'm going to be using one of the closures that came with in the box. It's a toggle clasp, and I want to string it on this turquoise color Soft Flex. I think that that's going to go really well with this, and especially like on some of these beads where you can kind of see through it, the color of the turquoise will show through, and it's just gonna add a little bit to it, make it a little more cohesive color palette wise. Actually, let's see. I was going to use these, but I think instead I want to use these bicones as my smaller beads. So we're going to use these bicones and some spacers. I'm not feeling bead caps right now, so we will probably use those in some other project further on down the line. But we have these metal rondelle spacers that are smooth, and then we've got these snowflake beads that can be used as spacers as well. So let's get these guys in their little sections before we start wire wrapping. I already wrapped 5 of the drops, so I'm just going to do one with y'all. It's a little much for one section, so but for the wrapping of my really beautiful gemstone for this pendant, I'm going to be using some 20 gauge wire for this because it is a little bit heavier. Not that the 22 wouldn't be able to hold it, but I just it's also larger, so proportionally a heavier wire will look sort of better on it, I think, in my opinion. But yeah, so for these, again, I've already wrapped 5 of them, and I want 6 total. So for this drop, to be able to wrap it, I went ahead and cut off about 7 inches of the 22 gauge wire. I'm just going to straighten it out with my finger. It warms it up, makes it easier to use. And about 1.5 inches from the end, I'm going to make a wire wrapped loop. And to do that, I'm going to grab my 6-step bell making pliers, and I'm okay with having a smaller loop, so I'm going to use the smallest loop on my 6-step bell making pliers. Pull it all the way around. I'm not going to be adding anything to this before I wrap it, so I can just go ahead and give it a little wrap. Now I'm going to be wrapping over this, so my wraps do not need to be perfect. They can be a little bit on the messy side. I just want to make sure that that loop is closed so it doesn't come undone as we are doing our thing. So now I'm going to slide this on here, and I'm not going to have it like right up next to here. I'm going to give it a little bit of space, and I'm going to use my thumb very gently and just push up, just bend up towards the middle of that drop. Like that. And now I'm going to use my thumb again on the other side bend that up till it crosses. This is sort of a tricky part. I'm going to want to grasp this, not where the drop is, but right above it, where it crosses. I'm going to wrap around, push my loop into place. I'm going to wrap around my loop and start coming down towards where I'm holding it. But now that it's wrapped around a couple of times, I can pinch my loop, hold on to it, and keep going down, all the way down over that part. And just keep going with this wrap until you've wrapped over the edge of where the wire is coming out, like that. Just making a little hat on top of our drop with a loop on it. And I'm going to be doing a very similar wrap with 20 gauge wire. On my gemstone. Now, I had a similarly shaped and sized gemstone that I did a wire wrapped bail from the Gemstone Orphanage. That would also look fantastic on this. If you were to do that with this, like if you were to follow that, I'll put a link to that tutorial below, by the way. If you were to follow that tutorial with this type of thing, the hole will not accommodate two of the 20 gauge wires at the same time. So you would want to use two of the 22 gauge, and you'd want to use the 22 gauge for doing that wire wrapped bail on that. But for this one, I'm going to make it very similar in look and appearance to this. So to do that, I'm going to be doing it pretty much the same way. Where the heck did I put my wire? Okay, and I'm going to use, because these are stainless steel, I did use silver for this, which is fine. I'm using the titanium color 20 gauge wire for this, and I'm just going to pull off a boatload of it because I'm going to be doing so much wrapping to wrap down over the top of it. And I'm just bending it with my finger a little bit while I pull it through, and that just irons out any kinks at all. Let's cut this off. Yeah, the titanium color looks a lot like the stainless steel, so that's one of the reasons why I'm using it. All right, now for this one, I do want a little bit larger of a loop, so I'm going to jump down here to the third largest loop on my 6-step bill making pliers. So it goes 1, 2, 3, so it's the third. Can go all the way around. And just like with the other, I'm going to go ahead and wrap my loop, because we're going to be wrapping over it in a little bit. All right. Now, let's see. Hold on. Because I'm going to want this to be facing that way and that way. All right. I'm just doing a pre-bend. I'm giving myself like about a 1/2 centimeter right there, and I'm bending it there. I'm going to pull this guy all the way along here. I'm not going to put it all the way up against where I bent it. I'm going to give myself a little bit of room, because just like with the other, I'm going to be bending this around the back of this like that. Go gently so that you don't break your gemstone. Very gently, very slowly. And now I'm going to pull this up along here. All right. Now, just like with the other, I'm going to grasp the wire, not the gemstone, and then turn. This wire. Whoop. Come on, buddy. I'm going to go all the way up around my loop. And we're going to go. Got my end flying around everywhere, catching on things. All right. Now see where it goes down here and it's a little bit skinnier there? I'm just going to wrap over that same spot a couple of times just to fatten it back out. And this is going to end up looking like a pretty messy loop, pretty messy wrap, and that's fine. Because that is the look that we're going for to match with these. All right, and this is my front, so let's tuck this in the back. And I know this is my front because I want this really bright lightning flash glacier crack to show. Let me make sure that this is cut off here. Tucked in so it doesn't catch on things while it's being worn. All right, so I have this all wrapped. And that is ready to go. So we are going to be able to start making our jewelry as soon as I've got my wash down. So I'm going to move this out of the way again now that I'm finished doing my wire wrapping. Now we get to paint. Hooray, painting! All right, now in my test swatch, I did not lay down enough of the translucent turquoise for it to show up underneath all this other stuff. So I'm going to correct for that on this one. And I'm going to use a bunch of translucent turquoise in my wash. So let's get our water out here. Get my brush good and wet. And pick up some paint. Now, do you see how the drawing gum is pushing away the paint and the water? I am just going to go ahead and go right up to the edges of my block here. And I don't need for this to be an even wash because I'm going to be dropping in some color in a little bit so I can have these darker patches of my turquoise color. I can have some lighter patches of my turquoise color. I'm fine with both of those things happening. I am also going to be adding a few other colors, a few other blues to this. And they will mix with it. Come on, water, all the way to the end. All the way to the edges. You could tape it off so you've got a nice clean border. I'm not doing that. I'll be fine. All right, and I think what I want to do is I want to take my French blue. Again, that's that ultramarine blue. And I'm going to do like the upper part of this, kind of this upper third or half. Dropping it in various places, give it a couple streaks along there. Couple splooshes. Like that. And now I'm going to grab my Indanthrone blue. That's that deep, dark, moody blue. Love this blue, and I'm going to do the same thing from along here. I'm just going to sweep this up a little bit. And so we still have our turquoise color. Just going to drop a couple more bloops of that in here. That turquoise, just putting it in there a little bit darker. All right, now this is where our magic is going to happen. You want your paper to still be fairly wet, and you can see when I tip it, you can see the shine of the water on it. Not too wet. You don't want to have like puddles, and I've got a few puddles here that I am just gonna tap away with my fingers. Just gonna tap these puddles away. So I want to leave the paint for the most part and most of the water, but I just want to take the excess away. There we go. That took away some of my puddles. All right, now I'm gonna grab my salt. And this salt already comes in a lot of different sizes for my salt flakes. I'm also just going to rub it with my fingers a little bit here to break up some of the salt crystals to give me a little bit of a grind. And I'm just going to sprinkle it all the way across my paper. Now, I'm going to let this dry completely. It needs to be completely dry before we brush off the salt and before we pull off our drawing gum. This guy out of the way. Here we are. We are ready to start stringing. All right, now let's get my stringing materials out. I believe that's going to be long enough. I'm going to string up one side and not the other. So I'm going to grab my bead stopper and I'm going to stop it right there about halfway through the thing. I'm going to start with my pendant. All right, right next to this pendant. Everything that I do on one side, I'm going to do on the other. So I'm going to lay this down over here next to it and string this side. I'm going to put these snowflake guys right there. Actually, no. A spacer first, and then a snowflake. Spacer, a snowflake. One of my gemstones. Oh boy, these are so gorgeous. I mean, look at them. It is like lake water, frozen lake water. Right, one of these jobbies. Another spacer, and one of my drops. And then another spacer. Yeah, I like that, I like that, I like that. All right. Let's do a couple more. I think this might be my repetition for the first lower part of my necklace. Gotta get these snowflakes on there. Then these two. Oh, put a drop on first, Becky. So easy to forget stuff. Lovely. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. These are just such a gorgeous blue. I am so happy with this blue. I did it again. Oh my goodness. Hey, wait a minute. Oh, there it is. I was like, where did my last one of these go? All right, because yeah, everything I do on one side, I'm going to want to do for the other. All right, so that's the first part of my necklace. And now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I might save that for earrings. All right. Now, don't know if we're going to have enough spacers for all of this, but we're going to sure try. This is where we switch to our bicones. And another great reason for having, actually let's do 3 bicones in a row. 2, 3. Another great reason for having the colored stringing material is because then you get that little flash of turquoise inside the bicone. I'm wondering if I should have been having these bicones next to my drops this whole time. No, that's fine. I am not doing anything wrong. Going to be just repeating this all the way up here. And you know, there's no reason for you guys to have to sit through all of this while I'm just waiting for paint to dry. So I may go ahead and do my second side of my necklace. Oh, I meant to put another one of these guys on here. I may do my second side of my necklace off camera, so you don't have to sit here through all of that, and come back to you when that is done. So we can check our sizing, see how it looks, and attach our clasp. So far I like it. So let me just actually switch this to that and start stringing from the other side. So starting the other side gave me a chance to see how I would like it if I used the bicones on the section where I'm attaching the drops, and I actually do like it a lot better. So I am going to be doing this all the way up, which means that after I finish this one side, I'm going to go back and redo this and add those bicones here, which means I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more of these. So I need to set those aside to make sure that I don't use them with the rest of this. But yeah, I like the way it gets me more spacing between the two spacers, and between that and the next little section of Snowflake and that other bit. I like that spacing better. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to do that. I just thought I'd pop on real quick and let you know that I am making a design change. All right, so I have my necklace mostly all strung, and it is the length that I would like for it to be. I have some 2x2 crimp tubes that I am going to be using for this. I'm ready to get the necklace finished, and then we can make some earrings to go with it while I finish waiting for the painting to dry. It is almost all dried. Let's grab toggle. I'm going to put the crimp tube on first, and then the toggle. And then we'll put this back down through the crimp tube. With this. And I'm not using a wire guardian because the coating on the soft flex wire is really good. Like I've never seen it wear off yet on any of the pieces that I've made. It holds up really well. So I'm just gonna slide some of these bicones on the end of this so that the end is going through a couple of them. You don't have to do this. These crimps hold really well. I just like to do it sometimes. Actually, that bicone was a little bit tight, so let's just slide this guy down here. Smoosh that up a little bit. And you know what? I'll slide that back down. And there we go. Now I'm ready to do some crimping, and I like these crimp tubes because they hold up really well when you use the magical crimper. The magical crimper has a little concavity in it so that it makes a little crimp ball. So you've got like a little bead at the end of it instead of having a crimp with some pokey outy ends. It looks nice. It's about the same size as these little bumps on here. And I like the soft flex ones because they are not plated brass, so they hold up really well. They grip really well. It is one of my favorite ways of finishing my jewelry, using these. All right, so now we've got that on one side. Let's get this on the other. Make sure these are on here good, but then also make sure that we have some movement. And I'm leaving it twisted up a little bit so that it's not tight on there. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Slide on my crimp tube, put on the other end of my clasp, put this end through the crimp tube, and then through a few beads. Now I'm going to crimp on this end. You can see that turquoise color on the inside of these bicones. I think it looks really cool. Especially because it just brings a little bit more of that blue color into the piece. So what I'm doing is I'm rotating it and then pressing down because it smooshes down the edges of the crimp in order to form that bead. All right. Oh, that's a little. So there we have our necklace. blue, and I would think I was calling these apatites. They're not. They are the London blue agate. That's what these beads are. This is apatite. And there are some apatite gemstones in the kit, but these were the London blue agate, and I think they look gorgeous with this. And so let's make some earrings before we switch back to our art. And I already wrapped one of these drops. I'm going to go ahead and wrap the other one. I'm going to wrap it the same way I did with the first. I'm going to make myself a little wrapped loop on one end. This just a few times. I'm going to, which way is that going actually? Facing. So I'm just going to give this little tip right there. And slide this guy on. And there where it's not all the way up to where I tipped it, but a little bit of a ways past there. Very carefully and slowly bend that up to the top. And with a little pinch on that side, bend the other end up. I'm just gonna bend that around until it goes all the way up. And I'm going all the way down. And this is how I did all of the other ones. Now that that's wrapped, for the most part, just cutting off that end a little bit, smooshing my end in. Oops. Good enough. All right, so now I've got those two. I'm going to grab some more of my 22 gauge wire, and I'm going to make a link with this drop attached. Let me see. Let's start with, that's going to be at the top. I'm going to have a little spacer. One of my blue agates and a snowflake. So that's what's going to be on my link. It's going to end up like this. So, because I want my loop to be down here with this attached to it, I'm going to go ahead and start my wrapped loop right there. All right, and for this part, instead of wrapping it right away, I'm going to swing this loop open just a little bit so that I can put my drop on it. Gonna get the drop on it, right? I'm gonna hold this, wrap it around once, twice, 3 times. And once these guys are all out there, I'm just using my fingers to measure from the bottom down to here, where I give it a cut. This is how I work off the spool when I'm making things like this. You know what? How about I fold this over the other way? So for this, I'm going to go ahead and fold it that way over the top of my pliers so that it leaves a little bit of space here for more wrapping. And I'm going to use my bail making pliers to make myself a nice loop up here at the top. Wrap it around. It's pretty dangly, but it's totally matches. Let me grab some of these ear wires that I have already made. I have a video that shows you how I make my favorite ear wires, my new favorite ones. I'll link that in the comments too, if you want to watch it. Alright, so there's one done. And I think I got time for another one, right? Because, you know, letting paint dry. And here's the thing, if you're following along with this and you're like, oh hey, I made all my jewelry and my painting is still wet, I'm going to tell you something. I got up and I fed my dogs and I had something to eat and I talked with a friend and I caught up on my YouTube comments. So like, you can get up and leave your painting and let it finish drying. You can also, if you're getting real impatient for it to finish drying, you can use a heat tool to help it dry faster. But because a lot of the magic happens as it's drying with the salt, you want to at least wait until some of that has started happening. And I'll show you in just a minute with the painting what it looks like now and what the salt did to it. Because if you dry it off too soon and you don't give the salt enough time to dissolve into the water that's on the page and push the pigment away, then you don't get the same effect as you would have if you just let it dry with its normal drying time. Guess what I just did? But that's okay, because this can be my top now, and this can be the part that I have attached to here. Okay. Crisis averted. This is what happens if I'm talking while I'm making things, I think. Not really. This is just what happens with me when I'm going on autopilot. It's fine though, because again, I'm gonna make a wrapped loop here. And I am gonna stop myself, watch me stop myself after I loop it around my looper. I'm gonna stop right there and not wrap until after I get my drop attached. Oh boy. Oh, that was real smart, Bex. Real smart. I do that all the time though. If you've been on my channel for a while, you'll know. This is just what I do. It's who I am as a person. It's okay that I do that. You gotta accept yourself for who you are. Alright, so now we'll put our second one on. So now I've got a completed earring and necklace set. And now, let me grab my watercolor block. I'm just going to set it on top of here since it's all dried off now. Now I went ahead and brushed off the salt, but you can see the spots where the salt was, it dissolved into there and it pushed away the pigment. And that's what I wanted it to do. For our little painting there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my drawing gum off. And I'm going to use this rubber eraser for it. It's the best thing that I've found for it. And again, one of the reasons you wait until it's completely dry is because if it's damp, you might take some of the paper with you when you're removing the gum. And it's just, the masking fluid comes off. There you go. And I think, like I said before, I have uneven lines. It's kind of a rustic edges to it. You can go back in, clean those up. If you want to, just be aware that you're going to have water lines, because that's what watercolor does. When you've got watercolor sections that dry at different rates, or you go back in, again, it dries at different rates, so the pigment pools at the edge and creates that line. And you can use that to your advantage when you're making art if you want to have a line somewhere. But I like the way that that looks. I really, really do. And I'm going to be adding a little bit of silver highlight to some of these with my silver gouache. I love it. I love snowflakes. This is such a fun painting. But yeah, isn't that cool, that effect that you get with the salts? I love it so much. And you can get that cool effect with other paints too. Like I did some test swatches with some other paints. Like this was with Rosa Gallery, using the turquoise, the phthalo blue. I did not use the cobalt, but I did use their ultramarine, and I got that effect with it. This was with the Roman Schmal, their Prussian blue. Look how great that does with it. Their ultramarine and phthalo turquoise, which is not showing up, I don't think, on my camera, because sometimes turquoise doesn't film right. But yeah, you can get like that effect with other paints. You don't have to use the exact same paint that I did for these. And then this was with the M. Graham paints you guys have seen me use before. And with this, it pushed away some of the pigment, but it also collected some of the pigment together where the salt was, which is kind of weird, but that's okay. Because the Paul Rubens did what I wanted it to do. Is this shaking the camera? I'm worried that it's shaking the camera. As long as you guys aren't like experiencing like vertigo or seasickness or anything, you should be okay. Or should I go ahead and erase this off the desk so that it's not shaking the camera? Or just go slower? You guys are okay, right? Right? And yeah, I actually even really love my super wonky, not symmetrical at all, giant snowflake right there. That's That's definitely a Beki Snowflake, if you know me. This is a really fun project to do. Just, you know, when you're feeling like having fun and being wintry. Having fun with your watercolors and some salt. It's a fun project. There's so much of it on here. I should just leave it like this. I'm tired. I'm just kidding. We're not done yet. We are not done yet. We gotta add our silver accents. So anyway, they released the companion bundle for the Bargain Bead Box on their site. They always do it on the same day that they, what is it called? They load the extras for the bead box. And I happened to have my phone in my hand when the email came through to tell everybody about it. So I jumped on right away and I was able to grab one. So when it gets here, we'll open it up and sort it together because it looked like it had some really, really fun things in it. And sometimes if they sell out real quick and they've got some other things, they will do a second version of the companion bundle if it has sold out too quickly, because it is limited amounts for those. They don't have enough for everyone to be able to get one. So they might do a second one in a couple days. Maybe they already did a second one. It all depends. They'll have to check. I'm sure some, what are they called? You know, the thing where they keep track of things. Inventory. I'm sure they'll have to check inventory levels to figure out how many of those they can put together for it. But maybe if you missed out on the first one, you'll be able to pick up one of the second ones if it is within your budget this month. It almost wasn't for me, but it ended up being all right. All right. So now for this, I am going to grab this. This, by the way, like, if you don't have like little sections or something to be able to mix paint on, you can buy things that aren't actually meant for paint and use them. This is a dip tray for like appetizers where you put like different dips in it. And I use it for paint because it's a great like little 3 sections for my paint to go in when I'm doing some stuff. All right, now let me get, where did my paintbrush go? Here we are. So now I've got my silver gouache. Looks like I got a lot of binder coming out there. That's fine. That happens. Ideal consistency. That's a better wash consistency. All right. Now, let me see how I want to do this. I think I'm going to choose a light source direction, maybe coming down this way. I'm just going to put a little dab of silver. Okay, I think I have all of my silver gouache on here. I am ready. Let's get this tipped over so you can see the shiny bits. And I'm going to pull this off of the block because it's completely dry. And the block, it has the gum on all the edges to hold the paper there, but there is usually a spot there without the gum. So to get your watercolor paper off the block, you take a palette knife or a butter knife or something that slides between these pages pretty easily, and you just kind of slide it along here, and it cuts through that gum, and helps you pull the page off. It's like a gummed notebook with the gummy bits. I love this. Let's pull out my necklace and take a look at these together. Alright, here's the necklace and the earrings. And we have ourselves a little winter wonderland art. We've got wearable art and we've got art we can look at. And I hope you enjoyed painting with me or making jewelry with me or just hanging out with me while I made stuff. And again, this is such a fun color palette. It's so beautiful, so wintry and fun and beautiful. And let me just scooch this up there. I love both of these, and I'm glad that I got to do this today. This really helped with me not having a ton of inspiration going. I don't know if I mentioned this, I forget because it was a while ago. But like, I have actually been making stuff this week, but they've been mostly like what I call other people's projects, where I did a lot of the Beadscapade projects that Neela did from Silver Silk and More. I completed a couple kits that I had bought and then hadn't gotten around to making, and that's really fun because then I don't have to stress myself out coming up with something new or original or trying to find my own creativity. I can rely on the creativity of someone else for a little while, and it really helps to like kind of spark it with me. And so that, plus getting all of these like wintry colors in the bead cuts this week, really helped like my frazzled, everything is happening all of the time brain to be able to say, you know what, I want to create something new, and this is what I have come up with. And I hope you guys are treating yourselves right. This season is such a busy, busy season, and you guys need to take a minute, take a breath, have a beat, and just enjoy some of the beauty, some of the friends, some of the great times. And hopefully this video was one of those things that you could just sit back and enjoy and take a rest from like all of the hectic. And I will catch you guys again later.